if you could like set this up perfectly, this is what you'd set up perfectly. So we hauled as fast as we could. Oh boy, I love this image. And it's blurry elk. Oh, I'm old and I'm tired. You just got to remember to bring a shorter lens. The picture makes itself, right? A little shaft of light coming in and spotlighting, and that's not right or wrong. While we were there shooting, this bull moose wandered out. What focal length do I want to be at here? I see you guys there. My settings here were not what I would like advise you to do. The bear walked away, we walked away, everybody was happy. They looked and it's like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh, hello. And I go, sir, you can see like the texture in the yellow parts of his eye. So I really had to crank that ISO up. As he flew by me, I could feel the wind from his wings, spine tingling moments. She's being a protective mom right here. Great gray owls are my favorite thing to photograph. I love them. And it was like magic. Usually it's just butt shots then. Click, 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 click. This might be my favorite photo of the year. I've said that already, but just want to let you know, we saw a bear heading this direction just a couple of minutes ago, like Superman style. The photographers were successful. Kind of a bucket list shot. The jackal's looking right into the bloody eyeballs with a spotted hyena holding it like a puppet. Kind of a crazy scene, right? And welcome back to the second half of my top 23 videos. And as I mentioned, these aren't necessarily my best images of 2023, but they're my favorite images of 2023, both of which are totally subjective. So feel free to disagree with me. Feel free to agree with me. Doesn't matter. It's all good. This is art, and it's all subjective, and I'm having a great time making it, and I hope you're enjoying learning about some of these images. And actually, that's a good point to bring up now too, is I really like making these videos. They don't get a ton of views, which is fine, but the people who do watch them seem to really, really like them. And I think I get a lot of positive feedback about how they learn a lot about settings and thought process and composition and things because I'm talking about the images. And so I really enjoy making these because people really seem to enjoy watching them. At least a certain segment of my viewership really enjoys watching these. So anyway, thank you for the feedback on these. I do enjoy making these because I know a lot of people like them and learn a lot from them. So anyway, let's keep cruising along here. This is image 13. This is another super interesting photo as far as I'm concerned. A lot going on here and like a kind of a crazy scene, right? This is a eland skull with a spotted hyena holding it like a puppet and a jackal trying to get in on the action of eating what's left of this eland carcass. So the lions had killed this eland overnight and they had finished eating it. And then once they left the carcass, the scavengers moved in, and that was lots of hyenas and a few jackals and some vultures. It was like, boom, they were all on it. And this particular hyena got like the jackpot. Some of them ran off with legs and different parts of it. But this one got the skull and the spine. And this jackal was trying to, kind of just pick off little bites. And this, this hyena grabbed it right between the horns and started flailing it around, like almost fighting with the hyena with this eland skull. And this particular frame was like perfect, the jackal's looking right into the bloody eyeballs, like just the orbitals. The eyeballs are gone, obviously, but he's looking right into the skull while the hyena is holding, being the puppet master of this cool carcass. So anyway, just super interesting photo, kind of gory. I mean, totally gory, but I love it, and it's just a really interesting scene to me that has a lot of story going on here. So anyway, Nikon Z9 with the 402.8, 1 1/8000th of a second, f2.8 ISO 500. And, kind of at f2.8 here, very shallow depth of field, like probably a few inches. And luckily, all three of the main elements of this photo are in the same plane. So I don't need much depth of field here. The jackal's in focus, the eland's in focus, and the hyena's in focus. So f2.8 is fine here, and I preferred it that way because it helps to blow out that background and just destroy it into a nice blurry mess so that you can really focus on the three elements of this. And if I had more depth of field, that background would have more texture in it and I think would distract from it a little bit. So that was great. Did I say that already? 1/8000th of a second, f2.8 ISO 500. Anyway, that's what it was. Next image. We are on a cheetah at full sprint. So this cheetah's probably gone like 65, 70 miles an hour here. And, this is one of those shots, like kind of a bucket list shot. Everybody that goes to Africa probably wants this shot. And we had an opportunity for this, and it was really cool to have that. So this one, we had watched the cheetah stalking a Thompson gazelle and set up and waited and watched that thing go. And then you got to be ready. Like we had set up there, this was the Z9 with the 402.8. I had the teleconverter engaged. So I was at 560 millimeters. I stopped down to f8 here because when a cheetah's running through the grass, you're doing your best to keep that cheetah in focus, and the camera's doing its best to keep that cheetah in focus. But there's grass and stuff that'll come between you and the cheetah on occasion. So, I wanted to give myself just a little margin for error if it picked up some grass or something, that hopefully the cheetah would still be in focus. So that's why I stopped down to f8 here. ISO 1600 and then 1/3200th of a second. So while this cheetah was stalking its prey, we had time to get set up, get our settings dialed in perfect the way we wanted them. And then when this cheetah launched its attack, we were ready. And then it's a matter of just trying to stay focused and trying to keep that cheetah in the frame as it's hauling by at 65, 70 miles an hour. The cheetah was unsuccessful in this attempt, but the photographers were successful in this attempt, and we got a beautiful picture of this cheetah running through the frame in all kinds of different leg poses, like fully splayed out too, like Superman style. But this to me was my favorite one of that series that I got, and I just love it. The focus on the cheetah and just that leg position at full sprint, all four legs off the ground, was just couldn't have hoped for much more. So it was great. And we're back with Leluka. So we're in Masai Mara, and this is later in the trip. We left the Mara, and then we came back to the Mara and found Leluka again. And this might be my favorite photo of the year. I've said that already, but it's hard to tell. Anyway, this is definitely it's a contender for my favorite photo of the year. And depending on the day, this is my favorite photo or maybe not. But this was Leluka, and she'd been walking straight at our safari vehicle. She was just cruising through the grass, and in the morning, and she came and straight at us, which was great. Click, 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 click. We're all getting just full frame headshots as she comes right at us. And then instead of going around the vehicle, she just slunk to the ground and went underneath the vehicle and then popped up on the other side. So we're shoot, 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 and then she goes under the vehicle. We go to the other side, and then usually it's just butt shots then as the animal walks away. But for whatever reason, she walked a few feet, and then she stopped and turned and just kind of surveyed the surroundings a little bit. And as she turned, the light was behind her, and she looked, and she was breathing, and the breath came out of her nostrils, and it was lit up by the backlight, and it was like magic. So I've got the beautiful backlit subject, and then it's lighting up her foggy breath as well. The whiskers are just glowing in that backlight as well. It's just fantastic. So, I can't think of much else that I would love about this image. It's just wonderful, and it's of my favorite cat over there. So anyway, this is the Z9 with the 402.8, 1/1250th of a second, f2.8, ISO 800. Super psyched with this one. All right, image 16. So this is a great gray owl, which is my favorite thing in the world to photograph. For those of you who haven't been following the channel for a while, that might be new information for you. But anybody who's been following me a while knows that great gray owls are my favorite thing to photograph. I love them. And there's a lot going on here that this might be one of those that it's a favorite for me, but might not necessarily make sense to you as like, well, I mean, it's interesting, like it's a cool photo of a great gray. But the deal with this is there's a nest right up above this. And I was watching this great gray owl, and she had 3 chicks, and 2 of them were in the nest, and one of them was standing on a branch next to it, and they hadn't left the nest yet. So they're not able to fly yet. And mom and dad are flying in food and feeding them, and they're still in the nest. And dad flew in, mom flew over, picked up a gopher, and then flew back to the nest to deliver it to the chicks. As she landed in the nest and was delivering it to the chicks were like fighting over it. They're all excited and they're flapping their wings. She knocks one of the chicks off the nest. And it's like falling down the side of this tree, and it's hanging on for dear life, and eventually it just falls all the way to the ground. So it's in the grass. And mom kind of freaks out like, uh-oh, baby's in the grass. So mom flies down and lands partway up the tree, just a few feet above the ground, and is watching. So she's actually looking at her chick on the ground who has just accidentally fledged. And this isn't necessarily something to panic about, because great gray owl chicks leave the nest anyways before they can fly. It's just part of their biology, and they climb up trees, like they'll find sloping trees and climb up them, and then they jump off and they flap their wings, and it's part of their learning process. But this one fell out, was knocked out of the nest, I think a little bit prematurely, but no big deal. They're used to that. But she's watching very carefully, like, is baby okay? And are there predators around? Because one, I'm there. She's totally comfortable with me, but there were also some black bears in the area. But she's being a protective mom right here. So where she happened to land on this tree was a beautiful spotlight coming in with a nice dark background. And she's just staring intently at her baby, who's just fallen to the ground. So this image probably has a little more meaning now that you know the story. And it's just kind of a cool image. It's simple and clean, and just interesting subject, like what's going on here. Great light. So anyway, that's the whole story with this photo, and that elevates it for me, knowing the whole story of what's going on there. But this was with the 402.8 and the Z9, 1/1600th of a second, f2.8, ISO 500. Okay, here we are. This is actually the dad. So that picture, the previous picture you saw, was mom, and this was dad from that same nest. And this was just one of those magic moments where I have a wild great gray owl that's flying around hunting in the evening, and I got all kinds of great photo opportunities with him. And then right as the light was almost gone and I'm getting ready to pack up, he gave me one last flyby, and he came by me, and I could feel as he flew by me, I could feel the wind from his wings as he went by. And those are kind of like, spine tingling moments. And he gave me one right here. And this is full frame. This is not cropped with the 400mm 2.8. With the Z9, 1/1000th of a second, f2.8, and then ISO 8000. So I really had to crank that ISO up to maintain that 1,000th of a second. So if something like this did happen, I would be able to capture that and freeze that. Because if I was at 500th, 400th, 300th, this would be blurry because he's coming straight at me. So I really needed at least 1,000th of a second to be able to capture this. Great gray owls don't fly particularly fast, but you still need, like at this close of a range, with a bird flying straight at you, like 1,000th is the absolute minimum you can get away with. And I got away with it, and like every little tiny feather in its face is tack sharp. You can see like the texture in the yellow parts of his eye, the the little catch light in his eye is tack sharp. So everything is just perfect. I don't know what else to say about this one. Just wonderful, and a wonderful moment, you know, to have a wild owl fly straight at you and feel the wind coming off of it as it goes by is kind of an indescribable feeling. It's really cool. All right, image number 18. This is a large male grizzly bear here in the Tetons. And the story here, again, the story is part of why I love this image so much. I was with a client and we had photographed this bear. He had crossed the highway up in Grand Teton National Park, and then he wandered off. And I kind of just took a guess, like, I think I know where he's going. So we drove, and then we parked, and I told my client, like, I've seen bears swim across the Snake River at this particular spot. Maybe he's going to go do that. Let's go set up and wait, because that would be like best case I can think of here is if he comes and swims right here, it'll be magic, right? So we parked the car and we got out and we walked a little ways, and we just kind of sat there and we waited. And we got our, you know, we framed it, so we got our composition set up the way we want, and we've got our settings set up the way we want for this bear to come out about 100 yards downstream of where we were set up. And it's a beautiful environment. And we were ready for this amazing shot. And another guy walks by, a guy going for a hike. And he's headed straight for where I think that bear's going to cross the river. And I go, sir, I know you can go wherever you want here, and it's no problem, but I do just want to let you know, we saw a bear heading this direction just a couple of minutes ago, and I think he's going to go swim the river right there. And the guy was like, oh, thank you so much for letting me know. Do you mind if I just hang out in here and wait until the bear's gone? And I was like, of course, cool. So literally right after we have that little discussion and we say hello to the hiker, I just happened to kind of glance around like I often do, just seeing what's going on around me. And I glance, and there is this bear standing there in the bushes, I don't know, 15 feet from us, just looking at us. You know, just curious look. And I'm like, oh, hello. My client and the hiker hadn't seen him yet. And so I kind of backed up to him. I was like, guys, the bear is right here. And they looked, and it's like, oh my God. And so I get the bear spray out and I'm pointing it at him, and I'm just like, let's back up. So we just backed up out of the way, gave him some space. And then once we got out of the way, he just started walking across, and he came right across the pathway. Didn't pay us any attention. He stepped into the Snake River, started cruising out into the river, and then he just kind of turned and glanced back at us for one brief moment there. And this was bang, click, click, click. And then he swam across the river. And so it was really just a super cool moment for all of us. And, you know, a close encounter with a grizzly in the wild can be terrifying, but most of the time the bears are like this. He was curious about us. It was no problem. Once we got out of his way, he continued doing what he wanted to do. We were prepared with bear spray, and there was a group of us there that, we could have made noise and, done the stuff you're supposed to do, but we didn't need to. We just let him continue his behavior, and it worked out great. We got nice photos. The bear walked away. We walked away. Everybody was happy. So anyway, this photo also has special meaning to me because of the experience of making this photo. My settings here were not what I would advise you to do because I was set up for a different photo and I wasn't ready. So we had set up, this was with the 180 to 600 millimeter lens. So I was at f6.3, which is wide open for that lens, ISO 800 and 1/200th of a second. So I had set up for that long distance shot at 200th of a second, which would have been plenty because the further away something is, the less relative movement there is. So the slower shutter speed you can get away with. But to be this close to an animal that's moving and have 200th of a second, I just didn't, between the excitement of what was going on, it just didn't click to me to oh yeah, I need to crank up my shutter speed here. But as often happens, even at 200th of a second on a moving animal, if you're tracking it properly and have good technique, you can still get sharp photos. And this one's tack sharp on his eye and his face, exactly where you'd want it to be. You get that little side eye of him looking at you like, I see you guys there. So really cool moment, great experience, and everybody walked away happy. All right. So this one is what a classic scene. If you could set this up perfectly, this is what you'd set up perfectly. This is at Schwabacher Landing, which is one of the big three landscape photo opportunities in Grand Teton National Park, where you get the mountains and then the beaver pond in front with a reflection. And actually this one, again, I was with a client and we actually were photographing maybe a half a mile further downstream at a pond that I actually like to photograph better, or a beaver pond. And we were there just for the landscape opportunity. But while we were there shooting, this bull moose wandered out of the woods and crossed the water and kept heading north. And so we were like, maybe he's going to go up to the other part of Schwabacher Landing. Let's go up there. So we hauled as fast as we could to try and get in front of him out to the main part of Schwabacher Landing. And the middle photo opportunity, he did come through, but he was too far away. It wasn't a good photo. So we continued north to the next pond and we set up and waited there. And we didn't know where he was because there's really dense woods there, but we set up and we waited and we did the same thing. We set up, hoped, okay, if he comes out right here, we're going to be ready for this shot. So we composed our shots. We got our exposure dialed in. I had my exposure to have that snow on the mountain, bright white without being blown out. And I had kind of framed it up, what focal length do I want to be at here? And if he steps out right there, I'm ready. And so we're waiting there, waiting. And sure enough, we see him coming out in the bushes right there where there happened to be a little shaft of light coming in and spotlighting the grass and the water. And if he had been 10 feet further back or 10 feet closer, he would have been in the shade and it would have been kind of a mediocre photo. But he stepped out of the woods exactly where you'd place him to be. And of course, the light's beautiful. It's early morning light. The snow-covered Tetons with some clouds hanging. I mean, just everything about it was you'd set it up this way. And so that's what was going on there, and it turned out just as lovely as you'd expect it to. So this one was shot with the Z8 and the Tamron 35 to 150 millimeter lens. It's an f2 to f2.8, very fast lens, and it's wonderful. And I'm using that lens a lot. That's my primary kind of environmental lens now. It works great and it's fast. So this was at a 6400th of a second f2.5 ISO 500. So that was wide open at 81 millimeters. And you could argue why didn't you shoot that at f11? Because a landscape photo there, you would shoot that at f11 so that the trees are sharp, the grass is sharp, the mountain's sharp, the clouds are sharp. And you'd be cool, do it that way and it'll look beautiful. I personally prefer to have a little more kind of separation between my subjects, so I focus on the moose and want him tack sharp, and I actually want the trees to get a little soft. I want the mountain to get a little soft. As long as they're sharp enough that I can recognize, oh my God, it's the Grand Teton, and oh, look at, it's snow covered and there's some clouds up there. It's not so blurry that you can't see all that kind of stuff, but it's just soft enough that the subject just pops a little bit more for my taste. So that's why I choose to shoot that wide open instead of f11 or f8 or f16 or whatever. And I had time to think about that stuff and get set up, but this was the aesthetic that I like. So that's how I chose to shoot it. And that's not right or wrong. That's just how I did it. And it turned out beautifully, of course. And now we're on to another moose. This is a moose we call Fremont. And he's probably the new king of the Tetons. Hoback this year was a little less involved in the rut than he had been in previous years. I think he's getting old and tired. But this guy's a big giant bull, and he's a little younger, and he's probably the main guy out there. And this is him doing the Flemin response. So, and the Flehmen, it's part of their mating, I don't know, ritual. They, a lot of animals do this. They expose a kind of a sensory gland on their upper lip, in their upper mouth, that will detect pheromones from the females to decide if the females are ready to mate or not. So he's kind of doing that up, exposing that, and then kind of sniffing, sensing for nearby females to see who might or might not be ready to mate. And it's a really interesting pose. And then to have him be facing straight into me was just perfect. Nice background, blurred it out as best I could with the f2.8. And actually that's kind of incorrect with the 400 2.8, but I had the teleconverter engaged. So this was at 560 millimeters f4. 1/500th of a second, ISO 800. That background's nice and far away, so it kind of blurs out and looks great. And some more moose. This was on my moose workshop again. This is the crew. So on the far right over there is Hoback, grazing a little bit, and then in the middle is Fremont, and then 3 other bulls that are hoping to be one of the big boys maybe next year or the year after that. But just a nice group of bulls at sunset. The sun has already gone down. Magic is happening in the color in the sky. Fresh snow on the Tetons. Like the picture makes itself, right? You just got to remember to bring a shorter lens. Like I was out there shooting with the 400 2.8, but I always, not always, but when I'm thinking straight, I always bring a shorter lens too, for when these opportunities happen. So again, this was that 35 to 150 millimeter lens, shot wide open at f2.5 and 69 millimeters, 1/100th of a second, and ISO 1600. So it's getting pretty dark there. And 100th of a second is about as slow as I want to do, because they're moving, but not very fast. But I want to keep my ISO nice and low, because the higher that ISO starts to go, you start to lose some of your dynamic range in that sensor. And with this scene, with that sky and all the beautiful color and then the dark moose, I really wanted to preserve as much dynamic range as I could. So slow shutter speed worked here, and the photo turned out just beautiful. And then I mentioned Hoback a minute ago, how he's kind of getting old and tired. And this is, to me, this was like Hoback at the end of the rut this year. He just looks tired. And he's got the floppy ear and his tongue's out. He's covered in snow, like there's snow piling up in his antlers, and his head's down, and he's just, you know, to me that's the story of Hoback. Like, oh, I'm old and I'm tired. And I've got these giant heavy paddles on my head, and I just want them to fall off so I can rest. And sure enough, the next day, one of the paddles fell off, and then the day after that, the other paddle fell off. So he did get to rest. And actually, I saw him 2 or 3 days ago. It's now March, and I saw him 2 or 3 days ago, and he still had the floppy ear, but he appears to have survived the winter well. He looked good. So hopefully we get another year with Hoback here. Hopefully his antlers look cool again. We'll see. Anyway, a super cool photo there. Z9 400 2.8, 1/320th of a second, f2.8, ISO 1600. And now we're at the final image of my top 23 of 2023. And it's blurry elk. And I love blurry stuff. Maybe you haven't noticed. And I'm even doing more of it lately. I like it. But this was late in the season, and this nice bull elk was kind of still chasing around some girls. And so he's got this group of cows with him, and he's kind of running around, and they were all on the move. And so I decided to slow it down and try and do some motion blur and capture him surrounded by the ladies. And it's a low percentage game, so I shot a bunch of these, and they turned out just a blurry mess, ugly. And then you get a couple like this where it's like, ooh, there it is. And this one, to me, was perfect. Couldn't have asked for any better. His antlers are sharp, his eye is sharp, and his head is sharp, and everything else just kind of goes to a blur, but just blurry enough you can see it's all cows with one big bull running that herd. And boy, I love this image very, very much. So this one was with the 180 to 600 at 600 millimeters, 1/4 of a second, f36 ISO 64. And that's going to be it. So thanks for watching again this year, and let me know if you have any questions about these images or my processes or heck, anything, future video ideas, whatever. Remember, you can always join me on my website, sign up for these workshops, Africa, Yellowstone, bull moose, private one-on-one stuff in the Tetons year-round, all that stuff. Please use my B&H links when you can. When you're going to buy gear, they send me a couple of bucks when you buy things, and that really helps out, helps support the channel, so I can keep making these videos and just keep on going. So appreciate it. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. See ya.